Hello, and welcome to the 2025 Annual Meeting of Stockholders of Schrödinger, Inc. You can submit questions at any time by clicking the Q&A button in the virtual meeting website. It is now my pleasure to turn today's meeting over to Ramy Farid, Chief Executive Officer of Schrödinger, Inc.
Good morning, and welcome to the 2025 Annual Meeting of Stockholders of Schrödinger. I'm Ramy Farid, Chief Executive Officer, and I will be presiding over this meeting. At this time, I call the meeting to order and turn it over to Yvonne Tran, our Chief Legal Officer and Corporate Secretary.
Thanks, Ramy. Good morning, everyone. Before we begin the formal business of the meeting, I'd like to make some introductions. Joining us today, in addition to Ramy, are the following members of our Board of Directors: Michael Linton, our Chair; Gary Ginsberg; Jeffrey Chodakowitz; Nancy Thornberry; Richard Friesner; Rosanna Kapler-Lieberman; Gary Sender; and Arun Oberoi. In addition, the following members of our management team are present today: Ramy Farid, Chief Executive Officer; Richie Jain, Chief Financial Officer; Matthew Luchini, Director, Investor Relations and Corporate Affairs; and myself, Yvonne Tran, Chief Legal Officer, Chief People Officer, and Corporate Secretary. I'd also like to introduce Katie Wexler and Erica Glidden, representatives from KPMG LLP, our independent registered public accounting firm; Tracy Oates, a representative from Broadridge Financial Services, who has been appointed to act as Inspector of Election; and Scott Lunan of WilmerHale, the company's legal counsel. Before we continue, we ask that you follow the rules of conduct and procedures for today's meeting, which have been posted to the following website: virtualshareholdermeeting.com/SDGR2025. Please note that various remarks that we may make about future expectations, plans, and prospects for the company constitute forward-looking statements for purposes of the Safe Harbor provisions under the Private Securities Litigation Reform Act of 1995. Actual results may differ materially from those indicated by these forward-looking statements as a result of various important factors, including those discussed in the Risk Factors section of our most recent quarterly report on Form 10-Q, which is on file with the SEC. In addition, these forward-looking statements represent the company's expectations only as of today. While we may elect to update these forward-looking statements, we specifically disclaim any obligation to do so. Any forward-looking statements should not be relied upon as representing the company's estimates or views as of any date subsequent to today. Please also note I've received an affidavit from Schrödinger's representative at Broadridge Financial Services, certifying that the notice of the annual meeting was sent to all stockholders of record as of April 21st, 2025, a copy of which will be included in the minutes of the meeting. Our first order of business today is to determine whether the shares represented at this meeting, either by means of remote communication or by proxy, are sufficient to constitute a quorum for the purpose of transacting business. Holders of 64,209,652 shares of common stock and 9,164,193 shares of limited common stock are entitled to vote at this meeting. The Inspector of Election has informed me that there are present, either by means of remote communication or by proxy, a total of 52,556,775 shares of common stock and 9,164,193 shares of limited common stock. This constitutes the majority in voting power of the shares issued and outstanding and entitled to vote at this meeting. Further, in the case of the election of the 4 Class II directors, this constitutes a majority in voting power of the shares of common stock issued and outstanding and entitled to vote on such matter. Based on the foregoing, I confirm that a quorum exists. We now turn to the items to be voted on today, as indicated in the notice of meeting and accompanying documents that we made available to our stockholders. The first item to be voted on is the election of 4 Class II directors to serve until the 2028 Annual Meeting of Stockholders and until their respective successors are duly elected and qualified. The 4 nominees for election are Jeffrey Chodakowitz, Michael Linton, Nancy Thornberry, and Bridget van Kralingen. The second item to be voted on is the approval of an advisory vote on executive compensation. The proxy statement for this meeting contained the text of the resolution that stockholders are being asked to approve. And finally, the last item to be voted on is the ratification of the selection of KPMG LLP as Schrödinger's independent registered public accounting firm for the current fiscal year. If you have any questions on the proposals, please submit them on the virtual meeting website. If you submit a question, please also include your name and affiliation to Schrödinger. We'll pause briefly now to allow stockholders to submit questions. I remind you that there will be an opportunity for general questions not related to the proposals after the formal portion of the meeting has concluded. Matthew, do we have any questions pertaining to the proposals at this time?
There are no questions at this time.
Thanks, Matthew. As there are no questions, we'll move on to voting on the proposals. The polls are now open for each of the matters I described earlier that are to be voted on today. If you previously voted by proxy, whether by mail, telephone, or internet, you should not vote now unless you wish to change your vote. Your submission of a vote now will revoke all proxies. For stockholders who provided a proxy, the persons named in the proxy will vote your shares as indicated on the proxy. For any stockholders who have not submitted a proxy and who wish to vote now, or for any stockholders who submitted a proxy but wish to revoke their proxy or change their vote, you may vote by using the Vote Here link provided on the virtual meeting website. Please follow the instructions there. We'll pause briefly now to allow stockholders to vote. We have now concluded the business items on the agenda for this meeting. The polls are now closed and the Inspector of Election has tabulated the votes. We have the preliminary report of the results of today's meeting. Based on this report, I can announce that 1, each of the nominees for director, Jeffrey Chodakowitz, Michael Linton, Nancy Thornberry, and Bridget van Kralingen, has been elected as a Class II director. Second, the advisory resolution approving executive compensation has been approved. And finally, the appointment of KPMG LLP has been ratified. The final vote results will be included in a Form 8-K that will be filed within 4 business days after this meeting. As there is no further business to conduct, the formal part of the meeting is adjourned. We'll now hear a report from Ramy Farid, our CEO, and answer questions from stockholders. Ramy, turning it over to you.
Thanks, Yvonne. As is our tradition, I'm just going to present a few slides on the company and recent progress. So as you can see here on the first slide, we have a number of businesses that are enabled by this highly advanced and differentiated computational platform that we've been developing over the last 35 years. We sell software to life science and material science companies globally. We have around 1,800 customers. We also form collaborations both in drug design and materials design. You can see here that we have quite a few collaborators over the year and many more actual collaborations. We also have a pipeline of proprietary programs in the drug discovery stage and development stage. You can see there that we have quite a few programs. As I said, these businesses are synergistic and they're enabled by this computational platform. So let me spend a moment talking about that. So our vision for the future of drug discovery is to enumerate massive amounts of chemical space, maybe all relevant synthesizable molecules, and as accurately as possible predict the properties of molecules that are, in the case of drug discovery, required for a molecule to be a drug. In the case of materials, obviously, different properties. But you can see here that if that was possible, if we could explore huge amounts of chemical space and highly accurately predict these properties, we can identify the best molecules. Now, what is this platform that I'm referring to? So at a high level, there are two ways of predicting the properties of molecules. One is using physics. So physics-based methods are highly accurate. They don't require a training set, but they're computationally expensive. Now, machine learning is very fast, as you know, and is very effective at interpolation, but it requires, in the case of chemistry, huge training sets. In fact, training sets that are really not practical to obtain using purely experimental methods. So now it's very obvious how we can leverage both physics and machine learning to do something pretty extraordinary. Physics can be used to generate massive training sets that, for machine learning. And now what we have then is highly accurate methods that can be scaled to the scale that's required to do what we've discussed on that vision slide. So this platform that combines physics and machine learning is highly validated by a number of clinical programs you can see here that we've been involved in. And not just phase 1 clinical trials, but phase 2 and phase 3, and even drugs on the market. And we also have quite a few, as I mentioned earlier on, programs in discovery and preclinical development with a number of companies. So let me just highlight for a moment our own proprietary clinical programs. We were very excited recently to be presenting for the first time phase 1 data in patients with advanced relapsed and refractory B-cell malignancies. We showed very recently that the molecule 1505, our MALT1 inhibitor, is well tolerated with a favorable safety profile. And we were, of course, very excited to be reporting encouraging preliminary efficacy. And we're looking forward to, later in the year, discussions with the FDA around the recommended phase 2 dose. We're also advancing SGR-2921 in the clinic, our CDC7 inhibitor. This is a potent and selective inhibitor that shows strong anti-proliferative activity in AML samples, including those resistant to standard of care. And we're looking forward to presenting data in AML, in patients in AML or MDS later this year in the second half of the year. We MIT1 program, SGR-3515. This is a clinically validated target and has the potential for benefit in a wide range of tumor types. And again, we're looking forward to presenting clinical data in patients with advanced solid tumors also in the second half of the year. So on the last slide here, these are the strategic priorities that we presented earlier in the year. You can see here that we've achieved the first one by presenting clinical data from our phase 1 study for SGR-1505. We also have as a strategic priority increasing customer adoption of our computational platform at scale. We've made great progress doing that, but this continues to be a very important priority for us. We also, as we have done every year, we deliver not only major enhancements to our existing technologies, but also completely new technologies, and we have this as an extremely important priority for the company to continue to deliver major enhancements, again, not only in the form of improvements to existing technologies, but completely new technologies. As I already mentioned, a strategic priority is presenting clinical data for our phase 1 studies for SGR-2921 and 3515 in the second half of the year. And very importantly, we have as a priority advancing our proprietary, both discovery and development programs, and of course, our collaborative discovery portfolio. So that's it for the presentation. Matthew, are there any questions from stockholders?
I'd like to remind our stockholders that we are answering questions that fall within the guidelines of our rules of conduct and procedures set forth for our annual meeting. If anyone has a question that is not answered during today's meeting, you may email your questions to Investor Relations at ir@schrodinger.com. I see no questions in the queue at this time.
I'd like to thank our stockholders for attending our annual meeting and for your continued support of Schrödinger. We look forward to providing you with updates on our business throughout the year. Thank you all for your time today.
This concludes today's meeting. You may now disconnect.